Sometimes when we talk about mental health, we act like it's something that happens outside of us. Like it's this separate, diagnosable thing that doctors deal with, or a conversation you only have when you're falling apart. But the truth is, mental health is into some separate system. That's not like your Wi-Fi that goes out once in a while and you just need to reset the router. Mental health is how your mind, your body, and your heart relate to each other every single day. It's how you wake up in the morning and decide whether to get out of bed. It's how you deal with uncertainty, rejection, love, loss, failure, and boredom. It's not just when something's wrong. It's part of being human. The reason I call this an honest conversation is because for a lot of people, we're not being honest about how we're really doing. We say we're fine because that's easier. We say we're just tired or stressed because that feels more acceptable than saying we feel empty, hopeless, or confused. The modern world has taught us to hide our pain, to intellectualize it, to diagnose it, to treat it, but rarely to just sit with it. We've built an entire culture that's allergic to discomfort. If you feel anxious, take something. If you're sad, distract yourself. If you're burned out, work harder. We've become so good at pretending that even our own minds start to believe the mask we're re-wearing. The thing about mental health is that it doesn't care about the story you tell the world. You can look put together on the outside. Job, relationship, goals, gym routine. But if you've been ignoring that quiet ache in your chest, if you've been pushing away those nights where you lie awake and wonder what is even the point of all of it, your body knows. Your subconscious knows. That heaviness that you feel in your shoulders, that exhaustion that no amount of sleep seems to fix. That's not weakness. That's your mind trying to tell you something. It's saying, I can't carry this alone anymore. For some people, mental health becomes this performance. You follow the right self-care routines, journal every morning, meditate, eat well, but it still doesn't touch the core of what's actually going on. Because at its root, so much of poor mental health comes from a kind of quiet disconnection. Disconnection from your body, from your emotions, from other people, from meaning. When you're disconnected, you can't regulate, you can't rest, you can't feel safe. And that's when anxiety and depression start to thrive. They fill the silence left behind when you've stopped listening to yourself. What makes things worse is that most people think their mental health struggles are signs that something is broken in them. But in many ways, it is the opposite. It is a sign that something very human in you is trying to survive. Think about anxiety for a moment. It's not the enemy. It's a signal that somewhere inside, your mind feels unsafe. Depression isn't just sadness. It's your brain as a way of saying, I can't keep doing this anymore. It's like your system is going into conservation mode because it's been running at full speed for too long. What if instead of labeling these states as problems to fix, we saw them as messengers? Messengers of imbalance, of unmet needs, of emotional starvation. There's a certain kind of suffering that comes from trying too hard to not feel. When you grow up in an environment where emotions were dismissed or punished, you learn to disconnect. Maybe as a child you realized that your anger only made things worse. Maybe your sadness made people uncomfortable. Maybe your fear was seen as weakness, so you learned to hide it. You smiled, you functioned, you became good at managing, at controlling your internal world so no one else could see how chaotic it really was. But that emotional suppression doesn't disappear. It burrows deep into your nervous system, and one day it shows up as panic attacks, insomnia, brain fog, or chronic fatigue. You don't even realize that your mental health is a reflection of all the feelings you've never been allowed to feel. And this is why people can't think their way out of suffering. You can't logic your way into healing because the part of you that is hurting isn't rational, it is emotional. You can read every book, go to therapy, and still feel like something's missing. Because healing doesn't come from understanding your pain. It comes from experiencing it safely. That's the hardest part, minus safety. If you grew up in a world that never felt emotionally safe, even being happy can feel dangerous. You start waiting for the other shoe to drop. You start associating vulnerability with pain. So when someone says, open up or just talk about it, your nervous system says, no, I remember what happened last time. Honesty is what begins to change that. Not honesty with other people. That comes later, but honesty with yourself. Admitting, even in private, that you're not okay, that you feel lost or angry or numb, that you're tired of pretending. Honesty doesn't fix things overnight, but it creates a crack in the wall you've built. Through that crack, light can come in. You start noticing patterns. You start realizing how much of your behavior comes from fear, from survival. You start understanding that you've been running your whole life from feelings that were never your fault to begin with. One of the most painful truths about mental health is that many of us are living lives designed to look successful but feel miserable. We chase productivity as if it's medicine. We scroll endlessly because the silence feels unbearable. We consume self-help like it's a substitute for connection. And deep down, we wonder why nothing changes. It's because mental health doesn't improve through information. It improves through transformation. Through feeling, through letting go, through forgiveness, through slowness. Sometimes people tell me, Dr. K, I don't even know what's wrong with me. I have everything I thought I wanted, but I still feel like something's missing. And I always say, that missing piece is usually you. Somewhere along the line, you stopped being on your own side. You started treating yourself like an enemy to be conquered, not a person to be understood. You stopped listening to your needs. You stopped trusting your instincts. You traded authenticity for acceptance. You sacrificed rest for recognition. And now your mind and body are simply asking to be heard again. The first step toward healing isn't to fixing what is broken. It is realizing that maybe you're not broken at all. You're just tired of pretending that you don't need care, attention, and compassion like everyone else. You're human, and that means you need connection, safety, and understanding. It means you get overwhelmed. It means you mess up. It means you try to be strong because you think that as what makes you worthy of love. But the truth is, you were never meant to carry all this alone. You don't have to earn rest. You don't have to justify needing help. The fact that you're struggling doesn't make you weak. It makes you alive. There comes a point in this journey where you stop looking for quick fixes and start looking for truth. You realize that all the routines, supplements, and affirmations are helpful, but they're not the cure. Because mental health isn't about addition, it's about subtraction. It's about peeling back everything that's not really you. All the personas you've built to survive, all the expectations that never belong to you, all the ways you've learned to shrink yourself to fit into spaces that were too small for your spirit. Healing is less about becoming something and more about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. You might start noticing that the things you used to tolerate suddenly feel unbearable. The conversations that drain you, the environments that suffocate you, the people who take without giving, you can't do it anymore. At first, you'll think something's wrong with you. You'll feel guilty for pulling away. But that's not dysfunction. That's clarity. You're starting to develop emotional boundaries. You're realizing that your peace matters more than your people-pleasing. That is when you know your mental health is evolving, when you start choosing discomfort in the short term for peace in the long term. But it's not easy because the world rewards the opposite. The world tells you to keep grinding, keep smiling, keep performing. It praises you for ignoring your limits, for pushing through exhaustion, for saying yes when every part of you is screaming no. And so you start to internalize the idea that your worth is tied to your output, that rest is laziness, that slowing down is failure, that being still means you're falling behind. But the truth is, stillness isn't weakness, it's wisdom. The mind needs silence to heal. The nervous system needs space to reset. The soul needs stillness to speak. You can't discover who you are if you're constantly drowning in noise. When people ask me what the first real step toward mental health is, I often say it's awareness. But not the kind of awareness that's just mental, it's embodied awareness. It's noticing what happens in your body when you talk to certain people. It's noticing the tension in your jaw when you suppress anger, or the tightness in your chest when you say, I'm fine. Your body keeps a record of every emotion you've ever suppressed. Every unfinished story lives somewhere inside you, in your muscles, your breath, your posture. And that's why sometimes when you finally start healing, you don't just cry emotionally. Your whole body shakes. Because it's not just your mind releasing pain, it's your entire being. You might think healing means everything will feel lighter, but in truth, it often means feeling everything more deeply. The anger that you swallowed for years, the sadness that you numbed with distraction, the loneliness that you kept hidden, they all come back. They return because they never got the closure they deserved. But this time, you're ready. You're not running anymore. You're learning to hold your pain with presence, not panic. That's emotional maturity, not the absence of pain, but the ability to meet pain with compassion instead of judgment. Something powerful happens when you start validating your own emotions. You stop needing the world to understand you. You stop chasing external approval because you finally give yourself permission to exist as you are. That's what real self-love looks like. Not bubble baths or affirmations, but radical acceptance. Looking at yourself on your worst days and saying, even now, I'm worthy of care. When you stop fighting yourself, your entire nervous system begins to relax. And in that safety, growth happens naturally. But we can't talk about mental health without talking about the loneliness that so many people feel. Even surrounded by people, you can feel utterly alone. Because loneliness isn't just the absence of others. It's the absence of being seen. It's what happens when you can't show your true self to anyone. Maybe you learned that being vulnerable led to rejection. Maybe you opened up once and got hurt. Maybe you've tried to explain your pain to people who just didn't get it. Over time, you start thinking, why bother? So you retreat, you build walls, you become hyper-independent, and then you call it strength. But deep down, there's a part of you still craving closeness, still wanting someone to say, I see you. That longing isn't weakness, it's humanity. The human nervous system is wired for connection. When a baby is held, its heart rate slows down. When someone listens to you with genuine empathy, your body releases oxytocin. Connection literally regulates your physiology. That's why isolation hurts, not metaphorically, but physically. Chronic loneliness has been shown to increase inflammation, weaken immunity, and even shorten lifespan. But the hardest part is that when you're lonely for too long, your brain starts to fear connection itself. You stop trusting people. You assume rejection before it happens. You convince yourself that you're better off alone. It's a self-protective lie that slowly becomes your prison. Relearning how to connect is one of the bravest parts of healing. It means letting people see you without your mask. It means risking misunderstanding. It means trusting that you can survive disappointment. For many people, connection becomes real only after they've accepted that it will never be perfect. People will still make mistakes. They'll still say the wrong thing. But you stop expecting perfection because you realize that connection isn't about being flawless. It's about being present. The same goes for your relationship with yourself. We often talk about self-improvement as if it's this battle between the good you and the bad you. You want to kill your bad habits, destroy your insecurities, silence your inner critic. But what if instead of waging war against yourself, you made peace with yourself? The parts you call lazy, unmotivated, or weak, those are usually the parts of you that are just tired or afraid. When you shame them, they hide deeper. But when you listen, when you ask, what are you trying to protect me from? You discover wisdom in your wounds. You start realizing that even your self-sabotage is just self-protection that's outlived its purpose. This is where real transformation happens. Not when you reject your shadow, but when you integrate it. You begin to see that the goal isn't to become perfect, but whole. Because when you accept every part of yourself, even the messy, contradictory, broken parts, you stop living in internal conflict. Your energy becomes available for living instead of fighting yourself. You become less reactive, less defensive. You start making choices from clarity, not fear. And that peace, that internal alignment, is what mental health actually feels like. The mistake many people make is thinking healing is something you do once. But healing is more like maintaining a garden. You pull weeds, water what's growing, prune what's overgrown, and start again. There's no finish line. The point is to be healed. It has to live in a way that honors your ongoing humanness. There will always be new challenges, new emotions, new losses. But when you have the tools, when you have awareness and compassion, you stop seeing them as threats and start seeing them as opportunities for growth. And here's something people don't often talk about. Healing can be lonely too. When you start becoming more aware, some relationships won't fit anymore. You'll start noticing how often conversations revolve around complaining, gossiping, or numbing. You'll crave depth while others are still chasing distraction. It can be painful, but it's part of the process. As you change, your relationships will too. Some people will drift away. Others will meet you where you are. You can't force anyone to grow with you, and that's okay. Letting go doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop betraying your peace to keep the wrong connections alive. Mental health, at its core, isn't about happiness. It's about freedom. Freedom from the constant war inside your head. Freedom from the expectations that suffocate your soul. Freedom from the belief that you're not enough. When you start living from that place of inner freedom, you realize that peace isn't something you achieve. It's something you allow. So maybe the real question isn't how do I fix myself, but how do I make peace with myself? Because when you make peace, the healing unfolds naturally. You don't have to force growth. You simply create the conditions where it happens on its own. Like sunlight on a seed, your compassion becomes the energy that allows you to blossom. And the beautiful thing is, the moment you start treating yourself with that gentleness, you start treating others differently too. You become more patient, more understanding. You see through people's masks because you've seen through your own. That's how personal healing becomes collective healing. When one person starts living authentically, it gives others permission to do the same.